get that arrogance to rest. This ain't happen overnight, that's why I do this thing to death. I might do this till I'm deaf, dumb and blind. You know I don't need my eyes to see my fate. Working fine, never mind me. I ain't worried about how they define me. Long as they can find me, they'll never.
What up, everybody who talks boxing, comments about boxing, makes boxing videos? I just listened to the open letter by Keith Thurman to the fans. There's just a couple things that I would like to address. So, his open letter, if you haven't listened to it or read it, whatever, however you want to say it, because I'm going to be honest, I didn't read it. I just listened to it on somebody else's video. They read it out loud, and, while I was getting ready for work. And, I just want to touch on some points when it comes to that letter. But, basically, if you haven't read it or anything, he's basically saying that boxing is not dead. Now, that statement alone is true. I don't think boxing is dead, but boxing is in a weird place. And I do feel that to a certain extent, it is a little bit wounded. And the reason why boxing is in a weird place, and really all sports are kind of in the same boat, is right now the fans have more power than they've ever had. Prior generations, really the most power that we had was our views and our money. Whether or not we're willing to spend money to go to a fight, spend money on a pay-per-view, whether or not we are willing to watch a boxing match over other things that are on TV, or going and doing things with our families. That's about as much power as we had. Don't get me wrong, it was a fair amount of power. But now we're the first generation that really has the ability to reach out to fighters and promoters directly. Mainly due to Twitter. And also to report on boxing as we see fit, thanks to YouTube. And, even with, this is something that I use. I don't really go online and read blogs that are done by other people. When I say other people, I mean like individuals, not companies. But there's people who do that as well. I'm not saying that they shouldn't do that. Just, that's not something, I don't know. I think just because I just find it hard to even make videos. I really have to make time, and it's even become even harder now. But I still like to do it. But reading blogs is going to take up more of my attention. I could simply just put on a boxing video and listen to it while I'm cooking, while I'm cleaning, sometimes even while I'm working. It depends. So it's it's a very different time now than it was even 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we didn't have the type of access to the internet we have right now. 10 years ago, I still had a walkie-talkie phone, which some of you may or may not remember those days. With Nextel and Boost Mobile. But some of y'all don't even know what Nextel is. But anyways, back to what I was saying. So, very different times just from a decade. Just within a decade, we've had so much advancement in technology. So, all sports and all industries really have found themselves in a very different place where their clientele is more boisterous than ever because they have the means to be heard. Now, as far as boxing being dead, like I said, I agree with that, but I do feel that to an extent it's wounded. At the beginning of the year, 2015 had its ups and downs, and we all have a lot of different feelings about the so-called fight of the century. 2016, I remember the beginning of the year, I was very optimistic. There was a lot that seemed like was going to happen. And there's been more disappointment than not. And I don't really like to be negative, but I also don't like to be a liar. So I'm just going to say how it is. It was very optimistic, and I have to say I've been let down. And we are going into the last quarter of the year. We're pretty much at the end of September. We got 3 more months. That's the last quarter of the year. And we only have one big fight for the rest of the year. And the only other, we've had some pretty good fights this year. We had the Thurman Porter, and we had the Crawford Postal. So we've had some pretty good fights this year, but we've had a whole lot more negativity and fights being postponed or canceled. We had first, the Thurman Porter fight was postponed, which I get that. I was one of the few, I actually didn't see many people defending Thurman on that. And I did. I went and I did some research and found out just how an airbag deployment can affect you. You also had, but the fight did happen, which is good. But then we had fights that didn't happen. We had, the Wilder Povetkin fight didn't happen. And Tyson Fury versus Klitschko 2 looks like it's not going to happen. It got postponed. Then it got postponed again. Now it's sounding like it's just simply not going to happen because, there's a possibility that Tyson Fury might get a 4-year ban, and he's depressed apparently, and all this stuff. So there's a lot, and there's a lot going on with these fighters that are disappointments. And that's not the only thing that's a disappointment. One of the biggest reasons why I say that the sport is wounded is because lack of competitiveness and lack of activity. Now, this is where I kind of had to get on to Keith Thurman. As much of a fan as I am of his, I have to call it what it is. And this does not just for him, but for many, many of our fighters. They don't fight. He has fought one time this year. Now, I will say, I understand why he fought only one time this year. But at the same time, there's kind of no excuse because he could have had a fight early this year. And he didn't. He could have potentially had 2 fights. After the car accident and then fighting, Sean Porter, which is like another car accident in itself. I can understand why he would want to take the rest of the year off, but he could have had a fight early this year. His last fight before then was in July against Collazo. he could have had at least a fight at the end of 2016 or early 2016, but he didn't. And a lot of these guys are guilty of it. That's why I say, it's not. I mean, I kind of have to get on to Keith Thurman about it, but let it be known he's not the only one. You got Sean Porter, his opponent. He's only had one fight this year. Now he did try to make up for it when the fight got postponed. He put on a little exhibition. That was nice of him. But at the end of the day, he's only had one actual fight this year. Danny Garcia, he's another one. The welterweight division is probably one of the biggest, what's the word I'm looking for? Culprits when it comes to this. And there's other divisions that have them too, but it's heavy in the welterweight division where you have these big superstars and they don't fight. And when they do fight, they're not fighting each other. That's the other problem. Like, one thing I got to give to Spence is that he's one of the most active fighters in the welterweight division. And you really can't say he hasn't fought nobody, because one, he has fought a couple names now. But more importantly, the reason why you can't call him, say that he hasn't fought nobody is because nobody's fighting. The guys who are names don't fight. So what is he supposed to do? Sit on the sideline and not fight too? No, he has to fight the guys who are active, which are the no names, pretty much. So in a way, I feel for Spence. And Keith Thurman, don't get me wrong, Keith Thurman is still one of my favorite fighters. I put him number 2, just under Pacquiao. And even at that, I would love to see Pacquiao give him a shot, because I think that he would beat Pacquiao, and I would have no problem with that. I think he has a chance to beat him. I'm not saying he absolutely does. I don't say it's a washout or anything like that, but I think at this point in both their careers, it could be a potential passing of the baton. But back to what I was saying, I do feel that it's wounded to an extent, and the heavyweight division has had a lot of excitement, but it's also had a lot of disappointment. And then before I move on to the next thing, there's talks that Joshua might fight Klitschko, and that would be awesome. But I'm going to be honest, I don't have high hopes for it, because look at everything that's just been going on. It seems like there's always something. And then the last thing is, look at how many fighters are getting busted. I'm not against VADA testing, so I'm not going to say, it's, we need to get rid of VADA because this is because of how it's affecting the sport. But, just the fact that these guys are dirty. A lot of them are dirty, and, I'm glad the sport's getting cleaned up, but I really wish less of these guys were dirty. I wish they were just training hard. So there's a lot of things that are very wrong with the sport right now. Make me and many other fans unhappy. We really don't get the fights that we really should be getting. I do think that, Keith Thurman versus Porter was awesome. So I do thank them for giving us that, but I'm really hoping that there's a change of a change of work rate as far as how many fights a fighter is taking, and a change in competitiveness. That's one thing I could say is the one fight that Keith Thurman had was 100% competitive. I just, like I said, I think he could have had at least one fight early in the year, but we'll see. We'll see what, Keith Thurman and other fighters do next year. I'm really hoping they're not fighting just one time a year. And they're young. These guys are not old. They're in their prime. And what are they doing in their prime? They're fighting like they're on the tail end of their career. Anyways, y'all let me know what y'all think. So my subscribers, anybody who watches my videos, or if you just so happen to stumble on this video, please feel free to leave a comment. Have a wonderful and blessed day. Peace.
My career, I got some people that write me like I wish you died like your mama did. These are the comments that I got a problem with. You should be quiet and watch what you hollering. Yeah, my fans will eat you alive. Trolls get up on my page. My bars fly over their heads. I wrote that line on the plane.